All right, welcome back. And now we made it to the third column, which is the finish for the class 2 amalgam prep, according to the NDEB criteria. And this column is the one you really want to master because it'll help you in other projects as well. So finish includes four things here you can see. Basically smoothness, roughness of margins, and prep. You want to make sure your prep is smooth. So I think you understand what I mean by smooth. Everything has to be, you don't want any roughness in your prep, any bumpiness. And, there's ways to accomplish that. Just, it requires control and patience in your preparation. Okay. So you can see this one is pretty smooth here, right? Look at the pulp floor is not bumpy. It's smooth. It's passing smoothly. That's just one thing here. So no roughness, cleanliness. And that's, make sure you wash the tooth. Very easy to get an A if you focus on this a little bit. So remove debris. Don't leave the powder from the tooth that you're preparing in the tooth. Make sure you rinse it with water and air water. And then you have the unsupported enamel removal. So mainly you want to make sure you don't have any unsupported enamel. And let's bring back that tooth where we had the acute angle, right? The one where we messed up the angle there. Let's see. I'm going to find it for you here. So this one, remember, so you had this acute angle here, the sharpness, and in person it looks a lot more sharp, this part here, okay? And that part could be considered unsupported enamel. So the risk with leaving unsupported enamel is that if they look at this as an acute angle and not 90, you may mess up the column where was the outline, where you talked about the 90 degrees. Now, even though in that column, it only said 90 was the A, then it said flared is a D. It didn't say anything else. However, you don't know what the evaluator will do. They may look at this and say it's not 90, it's not flared, it's acute, so we're going to put a D for outline. And if you get unsupported enamel, then it's also a D in this column finish. So now you're going to get 2 Ds, and that's bad, right? So you want to make sure that that you don't have unsupported enamel. So one way to think about it is unsupported enamel and having an acute angle is worse than flaring. Okay, so that's another definition there. The other one is caries remaining. So caries remaining, and basically I don't have one with caries in it. I'll try to bring one for another video, but for now, you want to make sure you do not have any caries remaining in the tooth. And not only that, anything that looks like caries as well. So these Kilgore teeth will have dark spots in them that represent carious lesions, and you have to remove them. Okay? So let's go through these and how to get an A. Okay, so how do we pass the finish? I mean, there's not much here to say except to practice making your prep smooth. Okay, so I'll tell you a technique to help you make it smooth, which is basically if I take the handpiece and the burr and I move along the walls of the prep slowly, and I push down on the pedal halfway. I don't push all the way, not with the full speed, halfway, and that way slowly it'll give me a smooth wall. Okay, and that's one technique. I like to use that one. Another one is, if you find where the roughness is, just be accurate. So some mistakes that happen occur this way. So let's say you found a roughness here. What the student does is that they go and they start doing this, right? So if the roughness is only there, why are you going all over the wall, right? You might remove the entire wall again and still have that roughness. So if you have a roughness, let's say here, then just, attack that area only. Go and rehearse your movement first, and then go halfway with the pedal. Go once, check it again, go twice, see if it's gone. Slowly, work slowly, and that you'll get smoothness, okay? And again, with the half push on the pedal helps as well. Cleanliness, I think that's easy. Just make sure you're rinsing and cleaning the tooth. And then you have the unsupported enamel. So which is if we take that other angle there, sorry, that other tooth with the, keep losing this one. There it is. This one here. So you want to make sure you remove the unsupported enamel. Now, one thing is, don't try doing it with a hatchet. So I could probably remove this with a hatchet. So you can see here, I could maybe carve it out. So if I could probably do this and just carve it out, right? Oh, you can't see. Let me make sure you're seeing there. Okay. So I could maybe carve it out or even go like this. If I take the 1 millimeter. Anyway, you don't want to do this, okay? The reason is it might work on plastic, but once you get to the Kilgore teeth, if you try to scratch out the unsupported enamel with a hatchet, what sometimes could happen is you could break the layer of enamel and cause like unrepairable damage, right? So if you try to do this, sometimes what happens is this is not real enamel. So what happens is that some of the enamel will more than the enamel will break off than what you wanted, and then all of a sudden you're left with like this roughness or damage to the tooth that's not repairable. So don't use the hatchets to remove the unsupported enamel, especially in Kilgore teeth, even though if it's working in plastic. So again, let me get that tooth that is with the acute angle here. Okay. You know, one way to do it, again, I mentioned before, I like to do it with the 245. The reason I like to do it with the 245 because I don't get any roughness with the 245. So what I would do is put a fender wedge. That's my first step, because the fender wedge will protect the adjacent tooth. Then I would put my burr all the way, you know, the entire wall. See how I'm going the entire wall, and I start off from the you know, inside, okay, near the axial pulpal, and then what I do is I move like this, and I keep doing that until there's no bump anymore. There's no acute angle there anymore. Okay, so I might be light here, light, and then just kind of make sure that bump is gone. Okay, and that way I make sure my wall is still straight, converging, and my angle is defined. My line angles are defined, and I remove my unsupported enamel. Now, be careful not to do this. Don't try just to remove it here like that. If you do this, you're going to have a weird looking wall. You're going to have a wall that may look like this proximally. So you might have this shape, let's say. You see? So you don't want this. If you put your burr only halfway to remove the unsupported enamel, you might get this kind of shape, right? You don't want that. So that's why I'm saying keep your burr along the entire wall, okay? To maintain the convergence, the straightness and the smoothness of the wall, and just remove the unsupported enamel. And put a fender wedge so that you don't hit the adjacent tooth, right? So that's a really good technique as well. Now, some people, again, I said, like to use the needle burr or this burr, whatever you want to call it here, right? I don't like it because it causes roughness here on this angle. Sorry, like let's say I'm trying to, so if you want to do the same thing what I was saying is that where you go all the way deep to the wall like this, right? It's too pointy. It'll just cause this weird groove for me. And if you try to do it like this, where you want to angle and just hit the unsupported enamel with it, you're going to create a groove. Like I've always almost created a groove here in that proximal cavo surface margin, and then I had to repair the groove, and then I ended up with a bigger clearance, and then I end up with like a 1 millimeter clearance, but with no unsupported enamel. That's fine. That's a good strategy. But I learned to do it with the 245. It was more consistent with me. Again, everybody will have different ways. You might learn the way that works for you. That's fine. I'm just showing you what I learned, okay, or what I know here. All right, so that is unsupported enamel. Now, caries remaining. So what will happen with caries is that most people are going to try, obviously, they're going to remove it with, what's wrong with it here? Oh, yes, it's because it's not pinned all the way down to the table there. So you're going to want to remove it probably with the slow speed burrs, right? The round burr, slow speed, right? So let's put it on this handpiece here. Oh, this one's too big. Okay. And that's fine. You could start with that, okay? It's a good way to start. You're removing the majority of the caries. Now remember, this is how it should look like once you're done your initial prep. Let me show you here. So once you're done your initial prep on a Kilgore tooth, okay? So I'm gonna, you know, draw this again, see here, and then you have that, and then, you know, you have this going on like that, and you have another one here. Not the best drawing. Let me draw it again. Okay, so here's a cusp. I'm being very conservative. This should be a little bit more. But anyway, let's just assume, no, let me do it again. Okay. All right, so here you go. That's better. Okay, and here's the other cusp. Okay, let's say it comes out like that. It's hard to draw with the mouse here. All right, so you want your caries, you're going to get this usually. You're going to have one here. You're going to get one here, and then one there. Okay, and that's how you want it. This is how you want it to look. You want your caries, okay, to be very clear, their edges. So you want this extra space. You want to see sound dentin. You want to make sure your caries are no longer in the walls of the tooth. They're only in the pulpal floor. Okay, so that's you extend your you extend your outline form to expose the entire carious lesion. That's the rule. So that's why they say based on caries. Okay, so the width is based on caries, meaning that you need to make sure you see sound dentin around all the carious lesion like this. You want to make sure there's nothing in the walls. Okay, and you have to see it just looking from occlusally toward the pulpal floor. Now you're gonna, once you're at that stage, you're gonna take your, you could take your slow speed round burr here, and start removing the caries. Be careful, right? And you want to be very, very careful because you want to leave, remember, the evidence that where your initial prep was. You don't want to damage that. So you see this here, this elevation. There's some sort of weird temptation while you're removing caries to flatten it all, right? You might start to feel that you want to flatten this area. Like you don't like it. Why is it there? I'm used to having a flat pulpal floor. So you might have this temptation while you're removing this and removing this to flatten this area as well. But you shouldn't. Just be careful. You want to leave that. That's your evidence that you did the prep properly in the first place, right? So you want to leave those areas. And clinically, you could put GIC here, for example, in these deep areas and then have a flat pulpal floor because you're going to build it up with GIC. Then you could maybe do the preparation. Anyway, it doesn't matter what clinically, but that's basically it. So you removed it. Now, there is one thing here. There's a catch. Sometimes with this burr, because there's no water coming out from it, when you hit here, when it's spinning, you'll find that it leaves little dark spots. Sometimes, okay, not always. And sometimes even with your probe, like let's say you're scratching, you might scratch a surface and leave a dark spot. Now, what if the evaluator looked at that dark spot and thought it's caries? That's it, you're done, it's E. Caries you can't mess around with. It's either an A+ or if you leave caries, it's an E. There's not even a D. So what do? You could leave a note. Some people leave a note that, hey, I removed the caries lesion, but that scratch is from a burr. Now, what I did is what I did to remove it is I didn't use the slow speed at the end. So you see those little dark spots or those scratches? So what I would do is I would take my high speed with more water. So I would increase the water. Then I would just really, really aim it. I would rehearse it with my loops and look at the spot and go like this without spinning first. Okay, that's why I'm going to touch. Make sure you're not hitting the assessment tooth. And I would just very gently go like, okay, I'm going to spin, touch, and that's it, right? Spin, touch, and then I want to see if it's gone. So what happens is first of all, it's high speed. So the high speed is going to cut that really quickly. The water is going to rinse it and it's not going to leave any marks because there's no friction to leave those marks. And that way I was able to get rid of it. Even in the exam, this happened with me, and I was able to get rid of it with a high speed and just touching that dark spot there with the high speed and a lot of water. Now, I want to say something again about the finish. You want to reduce a bit the water when you're doing the finish. So if you're going slow and you're pushing on the pedal halfway, you want to reduce your water a bit so that it's not too much water again. It makes it smoother as well. I noticed that when you have less water, it's easier to make it smooth. Okay, so I just went to smoothness. Let's go back to carries. That's the technique. So another thing is you could consider using the needle burr if you want, or you could find any other burr. Like there's so many options that you could become creative and find your own way. But I noticed that these scratches are due to the metal from the the slow speed round burr, and it would hit it and there's no water. That's why those are happening. So I noticed that with the high speed that never happens. So that's why you could even use this needle burr and just go like, okay, I'm going to see that little part here. I'm just going to touch it there, right? I just touched it, and when I obviously spinning, and I try to make it spin fast in this case. Okay, in this case, when I'm trying to remove carries, I know it's dangerous, so you have to be careful. If you don't try it when you're practicing, see if you could do it, but it works. So I spin it fast and I touch it a little bit, or you could even spin it not too fast, right? You could spin it halfway as well and see if that works, and then it goes away. That's just something I know that worked with me. All right, so that's how you get an A here. Let's go to, again, these are not ideal preps. They're just some preps I have from one of my friends that they did. And, we're just going through some criteria to learn what the criteria is. So the finish, you want the caliper surface margins to be smooth. So even the edges, right? They're going to look at that. So these have to be smooth. And one problem that someone told me is that sometimes these areas on the proximal here, the walls, it could be a little bit rough there. And now that's not something the evaluator is able to see when the tooth is in the typodont, right? But if they do happen to notice it in a certain angle, then you might get roughness. There's ways to do that. I might make a video about that, but we'll see if it's an actual problem that happens with a lot of people. Everybody has their own problems, right, in ACS. So that's why it's like requires different tactics for your own way that work for you, and talking to a lot of people as well. Okay, so that is the caliper surface margins. You want it to be smooth. Now look at this, unacceptable roughness. That's the issue. That's subjective. So you might have some roughness, but who says if it's unacceptable or excessive? That's why you want to try to do this right. You want to get the best smoothness, because if you have unacceptable roughness, someone may consider excessive. It's subjective. Then you have an overall prep. You want it to be smooth. Again, unacceptable roughness or excessive. It's subjective, not an objective measure. Unsupported enamel, you need to make sure you removed it. If you didn't, again, you have that same subjective problem. Debris, make sure you don't have any debris. Just clean the tooth. And then you have caries. There's no D here. It's either you have none or it's E. Okay, so I would say put a lot of time into getting this column right, because this column is easy to get right, but also very dangerous. Okay, it's easy to go to an E. Okay, that's also that. All right, so this table is a very awesome table. You don't have to look at the NDEB criteria. That's a little bit confusing. You could pretty much take a screenshot of this or print it, make something like this, and just every time you prepare a tooth, go through all of these, right? So go, okay, I'm going to check my external outline form. What's your buccal-lingual width? What's your contact clearance? This is how you get an AA plus in each column. What the criteria is, the point, and then what it needs to be. So you could add here defined and rounded. The pulpal floor depth, this is what it needs to be. Axial and all, you get the point, right? It's the AA plus for all three columns. All right, so from this we could conclude, how do we avoid E's, right, in this project? Avoid anything 3 millimeters, right? So pretty much in the pulpal depth and the axial pulpal depth, sorry, the pulpal depth and the axial wall depth. 3 millimeter will get you an E. Never leave caries. Never rebuild a tooth with composite, and don't make mistakes in an excessive way. Subjective. So try not to make mistakes that will, if they're excessive, they become E's. So try not to do them even as a D, right? Because it's subjective. And then how to avoid D's. So no unsupported enamel anywhere. Make sure you don't have any unsupported enamel. I would rather have a flared angle than having unsupported enamel, because when I say avoid D's, I mean the whole project, not just one column. Because if you get one D and two A's, it's still an A. All right. No debris and roughness, because those are subjective, and obviously they're going to get you to a D if there is any roughness, and they could become E's. No sharp or undefined line angles. Pretty clear. Now, why do I say pulpal depth less than 2.5? Why didn't I say it has to be more than 1.5? Well, the reason is because the depth getting to the 1.5 is easy, okay? You could always measure, then dig more, right? Drill more. But just make sure you're not more than 2.5. You cannot repair that, right? So those are, if you're starting up, there's so many numbers to memorize. I'm trying to highlight which ones you want to know. So, you know, it's easy to drill into the tooth and then go like, oh, I need to go more, I need to go more. Just make sure you're less than 2.5. I don't think it's hard to achieve 1.5. Why would you be less than 1.5? Don't be less than 1.5, right? And if you are less than 1.5 and you measured it, that's repairable. You dig a little bit more and you get to 1.5. But make sure you're less than 2.5. Axial depth, right? Same thing. I think it's easy to get the 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter. Just make sure, because that's repairable. If you find it too low, you could always increase it a bit, but make sure you're less than 1.5. Make sure the big hatchet, when it goes into the seat, it's you know, extends beyond the seat. Contact clearance, make sure it's less than 1. Again, same concept. Why am I saying less than 1? And oh, was I missing? Oh, here, I took it off. Why am I saying less than 1? Because pretty much the strategy here is just make sure you're cleared. I don't care about the 0.3. Make sure it's cleared, right? Let me see if I get that there. Okay. So once it's cleared, that means I'm good. I got an A. I'm done. Wait, one more thing to do before I get an A. Just make sure this doesn't fit. The 1 millimeter hatchet. Make sure this doesn't fit and doesn't pass through these walls, okay? So you see it's 1 millimeter. I'm trying to fit it in its 1 millimeter width, and it's not. That's good. That means that's an A when it comes to that criteria. Okay, let's take this back down here. Then you have do enameloplasty. So better to avoid damage, obviously, but learn how to do enameloplasty. If you're taking a course, or ask some people that are also with you in your ACS, and we might also do a video about it if that's something that interests you. Okay, and the way I would look at it is there's a strategy here that you could kind of think on just to limit your focus. Okay, one thing is people sometimes fail because they try to master everything, and at the end of the day, we're humans. You can't. It's hard to master everything within a few months. You might be able to, but may take more time. So what if you want to just pass with the shortest time? Is you want to try to put your energy towards what could help you pass, and a strategy here could be focusing on these two columns. Try to get A's in these two columns. Try to be master in them, right? Because they're easy. First of all, the line angle, the internal line angle and convergence shouldn't be too hard. And make sure you get these two depth right. The pulpal, the pulpal depth and the axial depth. That's it. You get an A in the internal form. And practice this part and you'll get an A. And that will, the finish will help you with other projects as well. So you want to master that. Then you could be a little bit, flexible with column external outline form. Now, I'm not saying go get a D on purpose. I'm just saying, it requires a lot of effort to master this column. Okay. And you can see there's so many things here, right? So since there's a lot of effort, I would be a little bit more, flexible, and I would sacrifice this column if I had to sacrifice one of them. Okay. So if you get a D here and an A, then you pass, right? And maybe getting a D here will make your life easier. Maybe opening the contacts 1 or more will make it easier to remove the unsupported enamel. You got to think here. Now, again, I'm not saying go do that. I'm saying in the exam, you only have one chance. Let's say a mistake happened in the exam. You want to learn how to control those mistakes and fix them, okay? So for example, let's say I'm in the exam and I'm preparing a tooth, and all of a sudden I noticed that I flared one of the angles here, right? Let's say I flared. Okay, so let me show you here. So let's say I'm just going to assume here I flared this angle. Okay, right here. It's flared. That's it. I'm in the exam. There's nothing I could do right now. I flared it, and if I fix it, it might create a bigger problem. Okay. Oop. Okay, so let me shrink that down again. What's going on here? All of a sudden, oh, there you go. I had it like this. Okay. All right. So okay, so let's say I'm going to draw this instead to make it more clear. So let me draw it here. So we have, you know, 4 angles. Okay, so let's say I flared this one. Okay, that one is flared. This angle here, guys, is flared. Now, if I go correct it, I'm going to have to dig a little bit into here. So I'm going to have to create a bigger S curve and go like this to make it a D. To make it 90. Now, that may open my clearance, right? It may open my clearance. But here's how I think. That's fine. Why? Because it's in the same column. If I already got a D in the column, why are you fixing one D just to get another D in the same column? Okay, so you might not need to fix that flare, right? If you could get it 90 without sacrificing another thing, that's fine. But think about it this way. If I got a flare here, okay, and so this is how your mind works sometimes. I have this flared, so I want to try to get this 100% 90, this 100% 90, and this 100% 90. Okay. Now, if you did that, that would work. Now, what if there's a risk that one of these 90s are actually acute with unsupported enamel? Okay, so let's say you got one flared, and now because you think that if you perfect all the other ones, maybe the evaluator will forgive you, and they'll look over that flare, right? So you go and you get this one. Maybe it's a little bit 90. Maybe there's a small unsupported enamel there. Okay, so let's say you have that happen. So now you have a D here because of the flare, right? And you have unsupported enamel, which is a D. So now you have 2 Ds, 2 separate columns. Your overall project becomes a D. Problem, right? That you don't want that. So what's a different strategy? Well, if I flared this, you know what I would do? I would go flare this a little bit. I'll flare this and flare this. Why? Because a flare could help me guarantee there isn't any unsupported enamel. Okay, I flared all 4. So what? I flared one and I flared all 4. It's still a D because it's still the same problem, still the same mistake, right? So I just went and flared them all to make my life easier, to guarantee I don't have unsupported enamel. So I would get an A, then D, right? And then I would get an overall A. Not only that, let's say I flared them all. Now I could kind of be a little bit more flexible with my clearance. I don't have to be that, you know, extreme with it. I could be like, oh, so what if it's 1? It's okay to be 1. It's still in the same column. If it is 1.2, then I'm just going to get a D on the clearance. So what? It's still within the same column. So I still pass, right? And why am I sacrificing this column? Because all of these things are related. You might have some minor damage to the tooth. Your enamelplasty might not be perfect. So if you focus on getting A's in these 2 columns, okay, and avoiding getting an E in this column, you'll pass, okay? A's in these two columns, avoid E in this column, you'll pass. That's it, right? Again, please try to get A's in 3 columns, but that's just, you know, being perfectionist. But being smart, if you're in the exam and something happens, make sure you kind of gather all your mistakes in this column, in one column, trying to get A's in the other columns. Okay, that's the strategy. And in this project, this happens to be, these 2 columns are the easier ones, so I'd rather get A's in them. And if I make a mistake, I'll try to limit all my mistakes into this column, which will allow me to put more of my energy into the other 2 columns. So remember, if you remember you have limited energy, you'll understand this, you'll be convinced more, because you'll be like, okay, well, I would rather put my energy here and not waste it on here. But if you have the energy to do all 3, go ahead, and if it works out in the exam, awesome. Okay. If you want to sacrifice the middle column, you could do that as well, but I find that weird because it's not the hardest. But that's just, I'm trying to get you into the mind of how to fix your own how to be a problem solver in the ACS exam, and what is the benefit of being very knowledgeable and understanding of the columns and the criteria. Some people go through the exam preparing, through the courses. All they do is they prepare tooth, they go show it to the instructor, they come back. They prepare a tooth, they go show it to the instructor. That's not enough. You need to understand the columns, because you have to understand how to get an A, not just show it to the instructor until one day you get an A and then you just keep doing that. That could maybe work, just takes longer. This is a faster way to learn and also to evaluate yourself. Once you learn how to evaluate yourself, then you do a project, you look at it, you evaluate it, you correct it on your own without showing it to the instructor. You develop, you become better faster, instead of always waiting that you need to show someone, right? Again, I'm not saying that it's good. You want someone to be training you and that you're showing someone your work, but you want to become the person that could actually evaluate your own work, because in the exam, you can't show anybody. You have to show yourself. You have to be able in the exam to evaluate your project and make the corrections that you need to make to get the A. And you can't do it without the knowledge of the criteria, right? That's it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that video. Let us know in the comments below what anything that you would recommend, some strategies you would use. If there's anything that you liked about the video, or some parts that don't work with you, that you don't like, and tell us if there's any videos that you would like us to make in Scholars Dental about the ACS, specifically maybe a specific video about certain burr or something. Tell us, which we could put it on the list, and maybe one day we'll come around and make that. Also, we are specialists in the AFK and ACJ preparation, so if you have anyone that requires one of those courses, check out our reviews on Google and Facebook. We're pretty much dedicated to that, and just let us know. Contact us at info@scholarsdental.com. Visit our website, www.scholarsdental.com, as well. And that's it for today. Good luck in your practice and your preparation and your NDEB journey. And that's it. See you in the next video. Bye.